Hey, thank you so much again for being here tonight. I've recently gotten to know Donna Seebo by watching her present with grace and wisdom at a recent event. She is an international mental practitioner, psychic, award-winning author, counselor, teacher, minister, speaker, radio and TV personality, and host producer of the weekday Donna Seebo Show and weekly Warriors for Peace and International Programming. Donna is dedicated to empowering others through education, media, and other modalities related to the understanding of the powers of the mind. She has been the guest on various national and international programming, sharing her skills and knowledge with people from various countries. Her background and experience is vast, and she loves to share her knowledge with those who desire to hear it. So I deeply am appreciative you're here tonight, and everyone enjoy.
Oh, I'm so delighted to be with all of you. It is always fun to talk about that which means the most to you. And I've been involved in the work of mind for most of my life, and I have to chuckle because it's been a substantial amount of time, and we won't go into how many years at this moment, but the seriousness of it in today's world, the difference between what it was for our ancestors using the skills of the mind in so many different ways, and what we're dealing with today in the modern world. You know, I've really been so impressed in the many years that I've been involved in this work with the various ways that intuitive talents can be utilized. There is not an industry nor any line of business that is not affected in some way by people's intuitive processes. In the modern day psychic, what is that going to look like? Well, actually, it's going to look a great deal like what has been done in the past, but maybe with a little bit of different costuming. One of the questions that came into my mind when I was thinking about doing this program this evening is I have been asked certain questions by people. They will say, what's the value of psychic ability? Why is it something that you feel we can utilize in our life? Now, you'd think after all the publications, and there have been literally thousands of them done, not just by the lay people that have found that they have been given extraordinary talents and have developed them, but also by people in the scientific arena. You'd be surprised at how many individuals I encounter when I think of interviewing different people and they're engaged in the sciences, and I'm sharing some of the information that they share with me with people that maybe I've had over for dinner, or I've been invited to a certain environment, and they'll go, but what's the big deal? I don't see where that has any value. Well, for those of you that are sharing this with me this evening, I know for a fact that you're very knowledgeable yourselves about the psychic area, and many of you are already deeply engaged with it and involved with it. But it's important for us to realize that when we're engaged in the work, we cannot assume that other people really understand or have an empathy with what we're doing. You as a group, and your group has been around for so long. And when I think of many years ago when I was introduced to it for the first time, and I had the chance to see all kinds of different people, it was so exciting because nobody thinks you're nuts. Everybody will say, oh, wow, tell me your story. I want to know about what you've experienced. Right there is a phenomenal value. Why? Because it gives safety. People feel safe in communicating with someone that is willing to listen or have an empathy with their experience. The value of developing your psychic abilities is unlimited. It's absolutely incredible because it enables you, number one, to understand that you're not an oddball, that actually this is so very normal and it's great to know about. But it's the different modalities that this can apply to. And when I think of the thousands of people that have crossed my broadcasting path, backgrounds in education and financial positioning, you know, it doesn't make any difference. This does not have anything to do with a person's gender. It doesn't have anything to do with their educational level. It just is. It's a part of us. And I can tell you that more people have educated me because of their feeling of trust and they're willing to communicate about what their experiences have been. They have educated me because I've become aware of the tremendous variety of situations. Now, I have a few books that I'm going to reference to because, and I want you to see them. They're in my library and I really treasure them. I find that people's experiences, when they're shared, many times in our world today, dependent on what you have read, dependent on what your personal education level has been, your lingo may not make sense with theirs. The modern day psychic is someone that is going to need to know how to use language and words that convey to the individual the understanding that they may need to have. And that's not easy to do. That's not easy to do. Because so often we get stuck, and I speak from experience, we get stuck in where we are and in what we know. And that's not bad, but we need to realize that right here today in our world, we are finding that there is a huge, huge gap in language, in communication with people, and especially the younger generation. Now, that may sound a little strange, but they have a different way often of explaining things. And people in general, when they start talking about their own particular psychic experiences, they sort of stumble, and you have to let them get it out in whatever way they want. And then you have to listen very, very carefully because their lingo may be different from yours. Now, what areas can the psychic ability be utilized in? You name it, you got it. You have got police work, it can be used in. It can be used in forensics. It can be used in multiple areas of science. It can be used in development of architecture. I mean, there's just no limit to the arenas that this can be utilized for. And that confuses people. If you're someone that says, well, I've explored this modality and I'm very comfortable with this modality, but I haven't gotten into this other one because, I really don't know that I can do it. I raise my hand on that one. I've done that too. The reality is once you have learned one particular modality and you've become very comfortable in it, don't be afraid to explore another. You might surprise yourself in what you're able to do. Applications in medicine, phenomenal. Nurses have found when they've gone through training programs, for example, in doing energy work, when they're working with energy, when they are looking at their patients in a different way than perhaps, what do I want to say, practical medicine and its training gives you, it's a whole different modality. I've known some phenomenal people that have gotten into medicine, and when they discovered something like energy healing, when they started utilizing it, they found a whole new dimension to themselves that they did not even have a clue that they could experience. It's fabulous what this does because it opens things up for you. And you may or may not have an empathy. I just did an interview with a gentleman, Robert Simons, on my show. And in fact, it was last Friday. And you're welcome to go in and you're welcome to listen to the show. This gentleman's in New Zealand. I really love technology, even though I feel like a Dummkopf at times when I try to use it because I'm not all that good with it, excepting in certain modalities. But I want you to be aware of something. I want you to know that when this man shared his experiences, and believe it or not, he's from Vermont, but he lives in New Zealand because he is very much involved with stones, in using them for healing, in using them to gain a deeper understanding about life. Now, I don't have his particular empathy with stones. But you know, I know some people that do. I'm fascinated with it. That is not my driving interest, but I'm so grateful for him and the conversation we had and what he was able to share. You see, you never know what you're going to gain from someone else. And when you have all of these different modalities, for example, let's say you were one of those brave souls that wanted to be a psychic detective. Ah, talk about an interesting line of work. Mhm. I've known people that are psychic detectives, and it's a very difficult arena. I chose, especially after working for a police department, not to get engaged in that. Why? Because I was in my 20s and nope, that wasn't for me. Because when you're a psychic detective, you have to understand when you're receiving information, you've got to look at it like you would a Disney cartoon. You don't get engaged with it. You don't get involved with it. You just look at the facts and the information and it just rolls through you. You do not attach to anything. If you do, you're in trouble. You're in deep trouble. And recently, there was something I saw relative to a psychic detective. She was put into a testing situation. She's worked with police departments all over the country. And this lady was asked to find out information on a little girl that had been kidnapped. And it was one of those things you think, this couldn't possibly have happened. It just doesn't make sense. But it did. She was riding her bicycle. She disappeared. Her mother had seen her, and in 5 minutes, she was gone. Well, this woman was contacted. The police officers that were interviewed relative to having her do the work say, we have worked with this woman in so many instances. And she's so skilled at it. It has helped us immensely. And there was another person, a gentleman who was a remote viewer. That's another application. And the military, as all of you probably are aware of, have, and they still do, research on this, even though it may not be public knowledge. It is still something that is considered very useful, not just by the United States, but by Russia, Israel, and some other countries as well. So that is another aspect. So the two of them were asked questions. The remote viewer gave his information, and then this woman, who is a psychic detective, gives her information. And I had to say, each of them gave details, but she was so specific because that is what she was focused on. That is her work. And I would say she had a good 90%, almost 100% of what she was given. And it's a fascinating phenomenon. How does that work? Well, I know when I'm doing work, and of course we're going to have the demonstration this evening, and it's nice that we have such a good sized group because it will be one right after the other. And I will tell you right now, before I end up doing demonstrations, that with the number you get, you better take notes, because I will be taking one person right after the other. I don't want to know who I'm talking to. I don't want to hear anything. I will just do one number at a time, and Anessa will be giving me that number. I'll be giving you information. I'll even put a blindfold on. Yeah, I'll even do that. But I'll be giving you that information, and you need to make your notes because I'm not going to remember it. I'll be very honest with you. I'm not going to have instant recall when you respond to who you are and the information I've given you. So that's just a heads up on that. But what happens? You know, I honestly can't tell you the exact way that it works because I've disciplined myself to just let go. Donna's not engaged. I get downloads. That's what I get. It's just the way it's been ever since I first found out that this was an ability I could do and I could utilize and I could help other people with. So when you find these different individuals that are using their talents in a different way, Business people will say, I walk into a room and I can read that room in 5 seconds. I know whether I've got an enthusiastic group. If everybody's having a lousy day, I can tell. You have speakers that will have their audiences, and they'll walk into that room and they'll go, uh-oh, I don't know whether this is going to be a good batch to talk with. I've got to get a feel for what's happening. You see, whatever you're focusing on, whether it's animal, vegetable, mineral, it doesn't make any difference. It's where you put your energy. And then as you grow and you develop, the more you educate yourself, the more you read, the more you have open conversations with people of different talents, the more your world expands. And that is something I have found in doing this work, that it's not going backwards at all. You're forced, you have no choice. At least this is my opinion. You have no choice about playing dumb. It doesn't work. Mm-mm. This work demands that you expand yourself. This work demands that you open yourself up to opportunities that are going to make your world bigger. It actually opens you up to the opportunities so that you can give more to other people, no matter what line of work you might be in. And it's more fun when you're able to cause a sense of conundrum with people. Why? Because he can't figure you out. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And if you really want to engage people at a party or a gathering, numerology, astrology, reading auras, iridology, all of these different components are marvelously interesting. It's the rare individual that will stay away from, are you interested? Would you like for me to do this for you? Very few people will say no. Why? Because we're always interested in ourselves, aren't we? We always want to do more. We always want to be more. And yet sometimes we want to shy away. But I have found in my work these many years, what really has meant a lot to me is that because of my work and because of my skills, I am able to empower other people. I am able to help them see why they go through certain challenges and what they may be able to look towards in the way of their own evolution as a human being. And it is a process. It's not something that you just add like baking soda to a glass of water, drink, and you burp up everything the way it's supposed to be. It just doesn't work that way. Nope, we're going to go through the bruises and the ups and downs and hills of life experience. But what's nice is that this environment of fellowship, of talented individuals that come together, just like here at BEPC, they are open. They are not afraid to share with you whatever you know. So if you're someone that's brand new to this group, oh my goodness, how fortunate you are, because you're going to encounter people that have integrity. If they don't know something, they'll tell you that they don't know. They're not going to try to make something, out of Disney World. It's just not going to happen. Life in of itself is a miracle. It really is. And if you can take the time just to think about where you are in today's history, look at what we've got going on. Our ancestors, if they were like an H.G. Wells, maybe they dreamed of something like this. But could they have experienced it? No. But like Phineas Quimby, who was known as a phenomenal healer, and I'm sure you've all heard about Edgar Cayce. Well, they were in such a minority. People had a very difficult time understanding very much about hypnosis, its benefit, past life regression. They didn't know anything about this. It was a whole new world. Today, you can go into a bookstore and find literally hundreds of books on those very topics and thousands more about so many other different types. Now, I said I had some books for you that I wanted to share with you. And this is nice because I am able to put this up on the screen and you can see it. But there is a woman that I knew nothing about. Her name was Catherine Hayward. Now, maybe you do, but I never knew anything about her. This is a story of her life. This is the book. And if you have a chance to get it or to read it, I recommend it highly. And I did an interview on this, oh my goodness, so it's a number of years ago, but it's by Diane Pomerantz, and she researched Catherine for a good deal of time, researched her life because Catherine was very much interested in science. Not only was she known around the world, but she was a person that worked from a very logical left brain positioning. Surprise you? Didn't surprise me. She left a legacy that is absolutely incredible. Then, you know, I said just about anything, any industry can benefit from the understanding of psychic abilities. There is a book I have in my library that I really treasure. I won't let it out of my library. It's called The Other Side. Now, you probably will find this in a secondhand bookstore. The Other Side. It's about Bishop Pike. This is a man, bishop of his church. He's in England. It was written, let me see. Let me go in here and see when it was written. Came out of New York, 1968. But this story is precious because Bishop Pike was very, very well known, an extremely religious man. But I'll give you a secret. He did not have that strong a belief in God. And he's a bishop. Surprise you? It was a surprise to a lot of people. Anything that had to do with the psychic area? No. His son ends up committing suicide. And I'm making a very short story, but his son ended up committing suicide. Now, at the time, Bishop Pike was in England and he was traveling throughout Europe. His son was in his early 20s, had gone to college and very bright, but he got involved in drugs. And he had stayed with his dad in England and they became very close. Where dad had been very, very critical of him, he finally accepted his son and his son was doing fine. But then his son went back to New York. And his dad didn't want him to go back, but he did. The next thing Bishop Pike knew, his son was dead from an overdose. And it affected him very, very deeply. But after his son's death, some very strange things began to happen. He walked into the apartment that he worked in, and his secretary was with him. They find postcards on the floor. And he goes, "Where did these come from?" Wasn't from the mailman. Other things began to happen. When it really got a little spooky is when the bangs on his secretary's forehead started to burn. A little bit weird? You bet. Finally, he said to himself, "I think it's my son trying to communicate with me." When he acknowledged that, that changed his life completely. And he started investigating life after death. Changed everything. And I became aware of his story, not just from reading the book, but from having the privilege of meeting a man by the name of George Daisley. George Daisley was Bishop Pike's psychic. George and I became friends. This was a number of years ago. And at that time, George was in his late 60s, 70s. This was many years ago, and I was quite young, but I felt so privileged to get to know this man because George had been trained by some of the finest psychics in England. When World War II was going on, it wasn't unusual for him to be in front of an audience of 10,000 people. Why such a large crowd? Because he was a medium and he could bring comfort to those who had loved ones that were in war zones that they had no way of communicating with. Many of them, they were there to find out if their loved ones were still alive or if they were in spirit and if they had a message for them. Very profound individual. George Daisley was a trance medium. Being trained, and eventually he came to the United States after the war, and he lived in Santa Barbara, California, and that's where I met him. A friend of mine said, Donna, you must meet this man. I did, and I was so impressed with him. I found his talents were just not in being a trance medium. He was someone that really was about giving information to people so that they could understand who they were, why they were where they were, and also the people that were there to support them. Whether it was family members or some other individuals that were specifically related, maybe to the path in life that they had to follow. This man was amazing. But one of the most important keys that I learned from him is that it's training and discipline that develops skills so that you can work with the public and it's comfortable for you. It's not going to make you feel apprehensive. You're going to be able to be yourself. You're not going to have to make a persona that's not real. You can be who you are and develop your own style. And that is important. Develop your skills. And as you develop your skills, they continued to grow. He passed away, I think it was in the early 90s. And I feel so privileged to have known him, but he knew Bishop Pike directly. George's name is mentioned in Bishop Pike's book because George had an extremely valuable influence on him relative to Bishop Pike's son. And Bishop Pike's son was all about helping his dad come to the understanding about life after death and how, as a bishop, he could make a big difference with people that he hadn't been able to accomplish before. It's a fascinating story. It's not just about adults and various experiences. James Twyman put a book out, and you notice I have my little markers in here. Yes, you should see the insides of the books. They're all marked up. So when I do interviews, I always read the material. And that's why I love what I do, because it's my skill of interviewing that often brings out information about people that they don't even have in their book. And that happened with James. But this is where psychic children speak to the world. Now, all of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with the statements of the indigo children, the crystal children. I mean, it could go on and on. There's all kinds of terms that come up. But these are children. James talks about a particular group, and it's James Twyman, Twyman. Feel free to research him on the web. He's a wonderful man, wonderful man. But the emphasis on this is how love creates miracles, and these children that he became acquainted with. I believe it was in Bulgaria. You see, the psychic ability is not limited to any country or any place or any space, anywhere. But most people are not going to be interested in, let's say, developing their own skills. They've got other things that they want to do. But as soon as you become alert to the fact that intuition, whatever terminology you want to use, belongs to you and it's inside of you, oh my goodness, you are on the road and there's no turning back. I remember when my mentor, Gloria, told me that. And I couldn't really understand. Of course, you know, when you're in your 20s, how much are you going to understand anyway? But the truth is, it perplexed me because I couldn't understand what is this road that we're supposed to be on? What is this road that is so different and so unique? Well, it's a road that widens. It doesn't narrow. It widens. How does it widen? It depends on the individual, and it depends on the experiences that that individual is going through. But you can't lock it down. You can't say, I don't want anything to do with it. I've known some people that have done exactly that. And you know what? It still hounds them. And they will tell me about different experiences that they have. And I'll say, my goodness, you're so much more talented than me. Why don't you want to do this? Why are you so afraid of this? They say, I don't care. I don't want anything to do with it. I'll talk with you, Donna, but I'm not interested in this at all. And I just have to smile. I'll say, okay, until the next time. Is it valuable? Absolutely. The modern day psychic needs to know that they are going to always need to expand and explore different options. Not with an attitude of being, vulnerable and just buying into everything, but really examining things because, the scientific side, along with the intuitive side, they basically are a team. And when the two come together, whoa, do you have a powerhouse? It is absolutely fabulous. It is fabulous. But too many times people want to isolate. They want to take and make the psychic thing out there somewhere. And they'll tell you, oh, gee whiz, only certain people can do this, that, or the other. I've heard that so many times throughout the years that I've been in this work. And I just smile, listen, and I walk away because there's no limits to what you can do. And when you are opening up to who you are, what you're comfortable with, and what you want to develop, you'll be amazed at what comes your way. You know what happens is that without realizing it, you'll fold in. Just like when you're kneading bread. You ever made bread and you knead it? What happens? The longer you knead the bread, the denser the texture of it becomes. And it becomes silky smooth. It's the same thing with the skills of the mind, of the body and the spirit and the soul. It continues to gain a density and a value that you would not have even believed possible. And you know what? You'll never have a boring life, which is absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Now, there's one other thing I want to bring up, and I've got it here. And yes, I'm sorry that I'm moving around so much, but this is lithomancy. Now, this is a book that was published by a Gary Weimer, Wimmer. Let me put it up here so you can, I hope that's, yeah, there we go. I think that's better. But Gary is a psychic and he uses stones. Now, I have to share with you, I know I've always been aware to one degree or another, the value of stones. We all, when we're growing up, we find out about stones relative to our birth sign. And we may say, gee, I don't like that stone. Well, there may be a good reason for that. But I'll never forget a young woman that I met. And this was at one of the Boeing expos years ago. And she was a young Black woman. And she had a tray of stones. They were just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And one day I had to have the chance to chat with her. And I learned that it was her grandmother who had learned from her mother and grandmother how to read the stones. Now, she had been raised in the South, and her grandmother would talk about the legacy of understanding stones that was handed down from ancestors that came out of Africa. It was absolutely wonderful. Her story was fabulous. And she would say to people, pick out the stones that resonate with you. And she had learned from her grandmother how to work with the understanding of the stones, how to work with the stones, just like the gentleman I told you I interviewed last Friday. These are things that when you have the opportunity to talk with someone, the discipline she went through, the training she went through with her grandmother, fabulous. And she's carrying forth the legacy. And I thought, how fortunate I am to be able to meet somebody like this, to share a story like this with me. It's great. It's absolutely great. You see, you never know where your talents are going to be applied. You never know how those talents are going to be used. So in this world of ours, that temporarily, because of the COVID virus, we're all sort of in a lockdown period. This is a wonderful time to acquaint yourself with different modalities, different people that have written different stories. And I know we can't go into secondhand bookstores. I don't know about anybody else, but here in the state of Washington, we are in lockdown big time again. And so a lot of places that maybe you could have gone to socialize, to discuss certain things with people, it's just not available. So guess what? We're using this. We're using Zoom. We're using whatever we can to keep up that aspect of communication, that aspect of sharing. And in my view, that individual, whoever it is, whatever it is that you're doing, you're going to find that your talents are not going to be like certain people's talents were expressed so many years ago. I'll share something with you. I had an Aunt Juanita. She's passed away. She was not very much older than me. She got married, I think, when she was about 15 years old to my uncle, Debbie R. And she would, it was like talking to a sister when I was talking to her when I was growing up, and not knowing that I was going to be engaged in the psychic work. I was in my early teens. And Juanita opened up to me this one evening about experiences she had had when she was in her early teens, my age. She and her sister went, and they were in Virginia. And Virginia, they don't have mountains. They have hills. They call them mountains. They haven't been out to the Pacific Northwest. These hills, and up on one of the hills, there was this old Victorian house. And she said, my sister said, we're going to go see this fortune teller. That was the terminology that was used. You were a fortune teller. You were maybe a gypsy, but you were weird. Nobody wanted to be around you unless they wanted to find out something. Yeah, that was my Aunt Juanita. Well, her sister said, we're going to go up and we're going to talk to this lady and have her tell our fortunes. Well, Juanita was a little hesitant. Her sister was older. And what's the normal thing when you're a teenager? Gee, am I ever going to get married? At least that's the way it was in Virginia for Juanita. So her sister goes in first. She's seen by the fortune teller. After a while, her sister comes out and Juanita goes in. Now, what was interesting about Juanita's experience is that the fortune teller looked at her and said, I couldn't tell your sister very many things, but I can tell you a lot. Juanita sat, she hardly said a word, and this woman started talking to her about the man she was going to marry, that he was going to have a very unique gait, that he could be in a crowd of 1,000 people and she would recognize him. That was my Uncle Debbie R. That she was going to be married very, very young. She was 15, 16 years old. That's right, and in Virginia, they allowed that. She also told Juanita that she was going to have 7 children. Juanita had 7 children. 4 lived. The other 3 died. This woman told Juanita so many things. And Juanita, in her young mind, she didn't even know my uncle at the time. She didn't know anything about him. But that wasn't the end of her experiences. There was one time when she was so desperate because there wasn't any birth control pill around, so she had one baby right after the other, and the toll on her was pretty serious. Depression. I was listening to her story, and I could only remotely understand what she went through. But there was one night she was so desperate that she honestly thought she wanted to end her life. Well, as it happened, she had a Bible that was handy. And for some reason, she saw the Bible, she was looking at it, and it opened up. And she said it was like a glow that came about the book itself. She went over, and there was an area, and I do not remember the verse, but she said when she read it, the book was illuminated, and she felt like she was wrapped in love. Never forgot that. I was sitting at her kitchen table. You know, it's a funny thing. I always end up at somebody's kitchen table. I don't know how I managed to do that, but that's where I hear most of the stories. Interestingly enough, a lot of the writing I do is at my kitchen table. So don't ever put kitchen tables down. Sometimes they can make you aware of things you would never be aware of otherwise because of people sharing stories with you. And I'm going to just have to let that phone ring. I have no way. I don't know where that's coming from. But what I wanted to say to you is this. My Aunt Juanita's story, that which occurred with what she said to me, really impressed me very strongly. And it impressed me so strongly that when I started getting involved in the psychic work, there wasn't a fear. There wasn't a fear because I was encountering people. I was encountering individuals that were sharing their stories with me as well. I was encountering within a little spiritualist church a whole batch of individuals. One lady, she had this flat stone. She'd do readings with stones. Someone else used another tool. It didn't make any difference what it was. But I never forgot Juanita's stories. I really knew that this was something that was interesting. And I had so many unique coincidences and circumstances in my life that even before I had the circumstances that caused me to start seeking information about dreams, etc., her story resonated with me very strongly. And no matter where you are in your level of development, just know there's no end to it. You're never going to have all the answers. And that should make your life so much more interesting. And when you talk with people from different cultures and they have different belief systems, all of that is so significant. It is so very significant. You are a person, each and every one of you, that is unique. You have your niche, if you will, but you need to know that you're in the company of people who will be there to support you if there are things that you don't understand. We're never going to know it all. And we're going to have out-of-body experiences or have those coincidences that in a million years we would never expect would happen to us. All of that is going to come together in the most unique and fascinating ways. Now, this evening, yes, I am going to be doing demonstrations. And I know Anissa is prepared and she's given everybody a number. So Anissa, if I may, as I know we've got a good sized group, how many people are in the group that are going to get readings?
We have 17 people tonight.
Okay, now what I'm going to do, I am going to ask you to, and I'm repeating myself here because I mentioned it earlier, to give me the number and that individual, whoever that number belongs to. It's very important that you take notes and just don't think your memory is going to hold it for you. You might have a photographic memory, and congratulations if you do. But you will need to remember the details, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the reading, and then Anessa will give me the next number. I'm not going to have any discussion with anyone. I'm just going to do one right after the other. Then we're finished with 17. Then after that, then I'll be able to converse with whoever would like to converse with me. How does that sound, Anessa?
That sounds great. And I just want to remind everyone that I'll also be sending you a private message just to remind you what your number is.
Okay, so I'm going to take off my glasses. And though I'm not in front of you publicly, because this is something that I often do with groups. So though I'm not in front of you publicly, I'm still going to put this on. And that is another barrier, because there's nothing for me to see. I don't see any of you right at this time, and I don't want to. But this way, then you know for sure, okay? So this always wreaks havoc with the hairdo. That's the only disadvantage of using it. All right, Anessa, let's go with numbers.
All right, the first reading is number 13.
Number 13, travel is going to be coming up for you. And also, you need to have some work done on your teeth. I don't know exactly what is going on here, but as I'm looking at it, I want you to put your health first. I also want you to be aware of the fact that there are going to be some unexpected phone calls, probably like the one I had this evening, that are going to interrupt what you consider your plans. And don't worry about that, because you'll be able to make the adjustment. In 2021, it's going to start off slow, but it's going to pick up momentum. Okay, the next person.
Number 9.
Number 9, grief. The first thing that I'm getting with you, I feel like you're kneeling down and there's this deep grief that I'm feeling inside my body. And it's as if you wish you could repair something. There is someone or something that you are carrying. I believe it's from the past, but you are carrying this, and you need to know, whoever this or whatever this relates to, it doesn't make any difference anymore. You need to be able to write it out so that you can pour your feelings out, and whatever this is related to, you need to release it, because it's holding you back. But it's grief that I'm feeling so deeply in my body, and it's time to let go of what no longer works. Now, the next thing that I'm looking at is your writing, and I want to encourage you to write. I want to encourage you to be aware of what it is inside yourself, the story that you need to tell. If you do that, you're going to be very, very happy with the outgoing results. Also, there is a peace sign between yourself and some individual, and I'm using the singular. I could be wrong. It might be more than one person, but I really think there's one person in particular that there is a need of creating peace with, and you'll be able to do that, but it's not for a while. This person has to go through certain changes. You have to go through certain changes. Okay, the next person.
Number 15.
Number 15, as I look at 15, I feel an open horizon when I'm watching you in my mind. Number 15, I'm seeing you standing in front of this open horizon. And as I'm looking at this horizon, it's a little scary, because I wonder, what is it that I can do? How can I possibly deal with this broad horizon? Don't worry about it. Just look at it, enjoy it. Take each day as you get it. Stop trying to control everything. Stop trying to make everything fit into a box. Relax, relax. And you've got a hard-working year, 2021 to 2023. No time to be slack on anything. I want you to really pay attention to what is most meaningful to you. Hold your integrity into place, and also realize that you need to stay focused and not be distracted. You get distracted so easily. Join the club. I mean, we all do it to a degree, but I mean, really, you are sort of feeling not too much so, but every once in a while, it's like all loose ends. Look, this cycle we're in right now is going to pass. By this time next year, it's a whole different ballgame. Don't worry about what you can't control. Next person.
Number 3.
Number 3, you have to be very, very thoughtful about belief systems. The reason I say this is that there is an agitation that I'm feeling inside of you. And I'm getting this agitation, and I want to say, examine the trigger that is causing this agitation, because it is due to a belief system that you have adopted that doesn't have validity. It really doesn't. You are making some judgments about certain conditions, certain individuals, certain environments. We all do this, but I want you to be mindful of the fact that this that you're going through has to do with the past. It has to do with the values and things that you have adopted that you've been taught by some other people. And it also has a cultural aspect to it. It doesn't have any worth at this time. And once you become aware of that, and you don't let things eat at you. I'm looking a lot of money going out. And I'm seeing you saying, I want to keep some of this. Thank you very much. I don't want this money to go out all over the place here. I want to keep some of it. Hang loose. Don't be concerned about money, because things are going to be very stable by the 6th of June of next year. Next person.
Number 17.
Number 17, travel, yes, but it's going to be for a specific purpose. You are on a learning curve right now that is extraordinarily intense. And a part of you says, gee, can't I take a vacation? Sorry, you're not going to be able to do that. You are on a roll, and you really enjoy interacting with people. And it sort of frustrates you that you can't do it to the degree that you would like at this time. Don't worry about that. Get your books, watch the documentaries, look at different movies, whatever it is that catches your fancy. You are learning some things. And I'm seeing areas of India, old history, could even be associations with Pakistan and its history. Whatever it is, there's something that sort of calls to you and you don't quite understand it, that has to do with an aspect of Asian culture. And this is past life experience. So there is an awareness that you are bringing out of yourself because of past life experiences that are going to come in handy. It's really going to surprise you. Your skills are very good. I want you to continue working with it, but I want you to remember, be like a child in the sense of being open. You don't take anything and everything in, but you're open. You keep your mind and attitudes where it's supposed to be, and you will find you've got a whole new level of perception and understanding that is really going to help you serve the people that mean the most to you. Next person.
Number 8.
When I look at number 8, what I'm watching in my mind is a garden. I am looking at a garden, and I'm seeing you saying, you know, I really would like to have a gigantic garden, but all I can really take care of right now is this little patch. And I want to remind you of a story about the woman that created the Valley of Daffodils. She added daffodil bulbs just a small amount at a time. She ended up, I think, with 15 to 20,000 daffodil bulbs, and people will go to see this Valley of Daffodils that she created. It didn't happen overnight. The expansion and the development that occurred over years. But she did a little bit at a time. You need to remember this garden, which represents you, a little bit at a time, and your garden is going to expand, and your garden is going to have a diversity in it. And it is a garden of knowledge and understanding that will enable you to nourish people as you want them to be nourished. But it's not going to be just the nourishment, it's going to be the beauty that you're going to bring in. You're a very creative person. Do not feel that you are small. You're not small at all. You are developing, you are growing, and it's an ongoing process. It never stops. Next individual.
Number 5.
Number 5, you are a person that is wanting to find your voice. And as I watch you, as I'm seeing you moving the mouth, it's like a little sound comes out. You know how we tell kids the little voice and the big voice? Well, you need to know that you are acquiring the language that you need to acquire so that you can communicate more effectively. You are learning how to do this, and it is a process, and you are becoming much better at it, and you're becoming much more efficient at it. So you are finding your voice, and you're finding it in a different way and manner than you could ever have imagined. So I really like what I'm seeing here, and I just want to say, stay true. Eye exam is necessary. This neck problem that you've got, you need to find someone that can show you how you can relax the muscles and realign the vertebra in the neck. And a lot of this has to do with posture. So you need to have someone that can show you what you can do to make sure that your body is in alignment. And it'll work beautifully. You'll be able to relieve any tension or stress in the neck and in the shoulders very easily. Next individual.
Number 16.
Number 16. When I look at number 16, I'm hearing music, I'm seeing dancing. It sort of reminds me of the scenes from Seven Brides, Seven Brothers, and it's a whole group of people dancing. And this is something that is a part of your spirit. You love music, you love dancing, you enjoy fellowship with people. And when I'm watching you, I am seeing you feeling sort of separating from this group. And you say, oh, I've really missed that. And I want you to know you don't miss anything. You are growing. You are not missing anything. You just need to expand yourself into those environments where you can have the music and you can have the dancing if you want, where you can have that sense of joy. But you need to be with a bigger group of people. You need to have more diversity in your social life. And I know we're going through another lockdown here in the state of Washington. Don't let that get you down. Remember, it is the environment, the shifting environment, the social interaction with other people, whether it is through something like this, what we're doing this evening, or through a church group or volunteer work. It doesn't make any difference, however you choose to do it. Just know it's time for you to expand. Next person.
Number 10.
All right, when I'm looking at number 10, I want you to be aware of something. You have organizational skills that are extremely valuable, but you also need to apply those organizational skills to writing, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 books that I'm seeing you being able to put together. Now, they're not really thick books, but they are materials that are of an instructional value. And I'm seeing you talking to some other people, and I am seeing you saying to these other individuals, wow, this is really important for you to understand, and you're going to get such good feedback. So your communication skills that you've been working on are really coming along nicely, and combined with your organizational skills and also the skills of being able to put things into writing, you're going to do very, very well. By 2027, you will have reestablished yourself into a whole new career mode. And you will then find that you have a number of people that you are going to work with under you that are going to, you're going to develop your skills of delegating to an even greater level than you could have ever imagined. Next person.
Number 1.
Number 1, when I'm looking at you, you're wanting to get into a race. Now, this is a race with yourself. So you've got some new objectives that are in front of you. You're wanting to get in that race, and you're saying, gee, I'm ready to go. I'm hearing someone blow the whistle, say, sorry, you're in the wrong race. I think you're going to need to give yourself some time to work through what your changing priorities are. And the magical word here is change. You like to have things in structure, you like to have things in order, and you're finding that things are not following order as you would have anticipated. Well, that's the way life goes sometimes. And what you need to do is realize you're not in a bad space, you're not going backwards, you're not in a stalemate. You are merely in this cycle that is saying, take the time to really look at the shifts and the changes that are occurring, encapsulate them, and then work with them so that you can see how you can go to the next phase. You've got a lot of personal responsibilities that you're taking care of, and you need to make sure that everything comes into its final harmony and balance. There's closure. 2021 is a year of closure on certain things that are to be left behind.